Hey everyone, welcome to this special episode of Lost Without Translation. Today we're doing something a little different. It's just me. I'm not in our usual spaces. I've got this temporary space and I'm here to do a post-mortem on the Wii U. For anyone who's been following the Wii U throughout its 4-year lifespan, it's pretty much dead. Nintendo didn't support it well enough. It has some great games. It was an interesting concept, but they really just didn't get the word out there, and I think they frustrated a lot of gamers with how they handled the Wii. They abandoned their hardcore gamers. They focused on casuals, put out a lot of shovelware, or rather let a lot of shovelware be pushed out on the machine, and I don't think people really forgave them for that. So the Wii U is in the state it's in now. For those of you who don't know, the technical version of a postmortem is basically after a project is completed in development, they revisit, the team goes back over the project to see what failed, what didn't work, and how they can improve next time. And I think it's an apt term for this console because, the Switch is coming up. Nintendo has a lot to prove with that. And I think it's good to look back, though, and see what did go right with the Wii and what games are worth playing. It's interesting to note that the Wii, at this point, only has about 150 physical releases, which is very little when you can compare it to other systems. It was out for 4 years, so that was quite a bit of time. But still, that's about it. For comparison, other systems like the NES and SNES had about just under 800. GameCube had around 500. The N64 had just under 300. And the Wii, had, I think, over 1,200, maybe even 15, depending on regions. It's pretty crazy. The portable systems do just as well. The DS, I think, is over 1,800, maybe even close to 2,000 games. The original Game Boy, if you include color games, is probably about, I think it's about 1,000. The GBA had about 1,000, and the 3DS is already up at about 400. It's probably, just going by those numbers, the Wii U is probably the worst performing system by Nintendo, excluding the Virtual Boy, which only had 18 titles, I think, around there. But there was a lot of good stuff for it. So, one thing that hasn't really come up on the show is I'm a huge collector. I love physical copies. I like to own everything. Well, not everything, but I like to own my favorite games and the games I want to play again in the future. And so I've amassed, a collection of Wii U games that I think are worth something. So I'm going to go through them. I'm going to, mix in the games, or also mention the games that I don't own that I think are worth noting. And we're just going to go through the releases in chronological order. It's a bit early to be calling the Wii U dead because, Zelda's still going to come out. But the truth is, I think we've seen almost everything we're going to see for it. The focus is on the Switch. There are almost no physical releases coming up. I think I saw maybe a couple games like shovelware, announced, but, the release lists are very barren at this point. Zelda is going to be the last game probably worth mentioning on the console. And it's surprising because other systems, typically when the new generation comes out, there's still a good year of publishing on the old console. Sometimes if it's successful, like the PS2 or PS3 or Xbox 360, goes on a little longer, sometimes not as much, but it's strange for, production to slow down this much before the next generation has come out. So that says something about, how much people like the console. All right, so the Wii U originally launched in November 18th, 2012. It had quite a few launch games. I've organized my games by what year they came out in. So basically, I'm going to include the November and December as part of the first year. That'll go, this pile goes up to the end of 2013. So let's get into the launch games, or at least the notable ones. The first one is Nintendo Land. Which I think everyone who was paying attention to the launch had heard about. Everyone thought it would be a new killer app like Wii Sports, but actually it wasn't. It was a minigame series that, has a minigame themed on Nintendo properties. And it was interesting, but it didn't really capture, what's so great about the gamepad. And, it wasn't really that memorable in the long run. It's still worth checking out because it is an interesting title. But, nothing like Wii Sports. Next up, we got New Super Mario Bros. U, which is not the Mario game I think people want the console to launch with, but actually a really good Mario game. I think it took some hits in the beginning because the franchise was getting a bit stale at that point. New Super Mario Brothers already had the original one. It had the Wii version, and I don't know if 2 was before or after this, but it was around the same time. It's worth checking out. It's probably my favorite of the series, whereas the original New Super Mario Brothers, borrowed from Mario 1, and the Wii version borrowed from Mario 3. This game took inspiration from Super Mario World, which is one of my favorite Mario titles. Next up, we got Mass Effect 3 Special Edition. You might think it's strange that this is in here just because this is probably the last console anyone wants to play Mass Effect 3 on. But the reason it's notable is that I think currently it's the only physical version of Mass Effect 3 that contains the From Ashes DLC on disc. And if you've played Mass Effect 3 and if you've played it with that DLC, I think you know how important that is to the game, to the lore and the new character and what it brings to the story. So that's the reason I think that game is worth mentioning. There's a couple other, titles that launched that I don't have, or I did have at one point, but maybe got rid of just because they're not really worth keeping, but they're notable for sure. I think the first is Epic Mickey 2, which is kind of a shell of the first game. It does not have the spirit that first game did, and that first game was already flawed, so it's not a great game, but definitely worth mentioning. It was available on multiple machines. Tekken Tag 2, the Wii edition, is actually really worth mentioning because of the Nintendo-only features. They had costumes. You could dress up your fighters like, Peach, Mario, Link, and it also had a special mode where while you're fighting, you could get the power-ups from Mario. So you could get mushrooms to get bigger and smaller, and it really changed up the dynamic a bit, made it a little more of a party game. Zombie U is definitely worth mentioning. It's an Ubisoft game released on other machines, I think just as Zombie. But the Wii U controls really made it stand out. The way you manage your inventory in real time by looking at the gamepad added some nice tension to the game. The game design, the designers have said it was inspired by Dark Souls, and it does kind of feel like that. The atmosphere is there, the difficulty is there, and it's worth checking out. Just 4 months after the launch of the Wii, we started getting, a couple more titles, but one notable one is, I would say the first notable third-party post-launch release is Lego City Undercover, and this game held its value for a long time. It only just dropped recently, and that's because they wanted to sell it before the announcement that it was coming to other consoles. But that said, it was an exclusive for almost 4 years, and it's an amazing Lego game. It's funny, it's fun, it's definitely worth checking out and worth mentioning. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate also came out around this time. I'm not a big Monster Hunter fan, but it's hard to discount the popularity of that series in certain circles. Mostly people play that on portables, but to have a console version is pretty nice. I think 3 is just a port of the Wii version, but if you're into that game, you kind of want the best experience. A little bit after that, we got New Super Luigi U, the first kind of standalone expansion to New Super Mario Brothers. It's the exact same game engine. The big difference is you play as Luigi, and he controls very differently. That's inspired by the US Super Mario Brothers 2. He's floaty, he can jump higher, and it's much more difficult. It still has 4 players, just without Mario, and so it's worth checking out. One of my favorites for the Wii is Pikmin 3. This game, we waited a long time for a new Pikmin game, and though the controls I felt were a bit of a step back from the previous titles, this game is wicked. Check it out. It's so much fun. It's Nintendo's take on a real-time strategy. Look up Pikmin if you haven't played it, because this is one of the reasons I think to own this system. Another game that came out around this point that's worth mentioning is Game & Wario. It's not a WarioWare game. Well, that was a bit misleading, but it is a Wario-themed mini-game series. It takes inspiration from Nintendo's old Game & Watch series. It has 16 mini-games, and it's worth noting. Next up, we have Ducktales Remastered. This thing came out on everything. It came out first as a digital copy. It eventually got physical releases. The reason I got the Wii U version is just because it's a remake of the NES game. I think it's worth playing on a Nintendo machine. Next up, Rayman Legends. This game was touted as exclusive for a while. It eventually did come to other machines, but it still works best on the Wii. The gamepad only features that, they just didn't port well to the other machines. And it is a wicked platformer with some great music stages. But overall, one of the best platformers that isn't made by Nintendo. Platinum Games fans probably know Wonderful 101. This is a crazy, Platinum style game. It takes inspiration from some, real-time strategy games, but it is not really that. It is a mix of Platinum action with that. It's, the controls are a little weird. Some people find the pacing strange, but it is definitely one of the crazier exclusives worth checking out on the Wii U. I don't think I need to say much about Wind Waker HD. If you didn't play the original Wind Waker, this is the best version. You should definitely play it. It's also one of my favorite 3D Zeldas. They streamlined it a bit. It looks amazing. But if you've already played the original and don't really want to revisit it, then, there's not really much worth saying. Around this time, we get a couple other games I don't have here. We got Sonic the Lost World, which I think is worth mentioning because it is an exclusive. And it's not a bad game. It's not a great game either. It's really more interesting just to see how Sega tries to pull off a Super Mario Galaxy inspired game. It's Sonic, but it's all on floating, land masses, and you play around like Super Mario Galaxy. Like I said, it's all right. If you're a huge Sonic fan, you'll probably like it. But otherwise, it's just notable for being an exclusive that's decent. We also get Wii Fit You, which did come out physically, but if you had the original Wii Fit balance board, you could just download a demo, use that for a little bit, and then you had to buy a pedometer to use with it. So once you bought the pedometer, you could keep playing the full version, the digital copy, and later those were released as a pack. It's an interesting idea only because if you already have that hardware and you're still playing your old Wii Fit, it's a nice way to kind of upgrade it to the new machine without having to respend on all that. Last up for what I'm calling year one is Super Mario 3D World, which is, I guess, like the big Mario game for the Wii U. It is still not what I think people expected from a follow-up from Super Mario Galaxy, but it is an amazing Mario game in its own right. It's 4-player. It takes inspiration from the 3DS game Super Mario 3D Land. I don't really know how to describe it. I would say it's kind of isometric. Obviously, the camera can move, and it's not really isometric, but it has the feel of an old isometric game. It's got that weird kind of view looking down on the field. It's a fun 4-player co-op in a unique Mario experience that is definitely worth checking out. All right, year two kicks off with Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze, which is an amazing Donkey Kong Country game. It's maybe the best Donkey Kong Country game. It's got 4 playable characters. It's got 2-player co-op. It takes everything that the Wii version did and just makes it, takes it a step further. Definitely worth checking out. Right after that, Mario Kart 8. Probably one of the best Mario Karts. It really benefits from the HD upgrade. It's a lot of fun. If you're into Mario Kart, then or you really need to check it out. Next up is Shovel Knight, which is notable for a couple reasons. It was one of the first kind of indie games to get a physical release. It's got that old school 8-bit style that just really works in this game. A lot of games were doing it at this time, but Shovel Knight stood out as one that was just real fun. They launched an Amiibo soon after this, and the Amiibo unlocks challenges and some customization options, and it's notable on the Wii for that. Right after that, we get the Zelda-inspired Dynasty Warriors. Hyrule Warriors is definitely worth checking out. I do not like the Dynasty Warriors series. I think they're really interesting. I think they're cool, but in execution, I just can't get into them. I've played the Gundam ones and everything, and it's just Hyrule Warriors was the first game that I really thought they were trying to do something different with. Next up, one of the best games on the console, and something that definitely generated a lot of controversy when it was announced, Bayonetta 2, sequel to Platinum's huge action, character action game. It's crazy fun. It's incredible. It's exclusive to Wii because Nintendo helped fund it. The first print came with the original Bayonetta, so technically 1 and 2 are in here. It's definitely worth playing. If you like character action games, if you like games like Devil May Cry and God of War, Bayonetta 2 may be among the best. It's just a ton of fun. Next up is Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, also known as Smash 4. Everyone agrees that Smash Bros. Brawl for Wii was a little bit of a letdown. It had a great cast, but the controls were a bit off. It felt a bit floaty, and tons of people played Melee, or continued to play Melee long after it came out. Smash 4 actually does a great job of, bringing the series forward. The cast is huge. There's some great DLC. The controls feel right again. It's definitely worth checking out. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is a fun little puzzle game. If you played Super Mario 3D World, it takes the Toad levels from that, the bonus stages, and it makes it into its own game. There's a ton of stages. It's really fun. It's more puzzly than platformy, but it's definitely worth checking out. And finally, the NES Remix Pack, which for retro fans is amazing. I don't know how much other people would love it, but it's a really cool concept. It combines the 2 NES Remix Packs for a total of about 28 different games. You get to play different challenges from all those NES games, and it really shows you those games, teaches you how to play them, and gives you some challenges that are real fun. Moving right into year 3, as I'm calling it, we got Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, which is a follow-up to the super popular Kirby's Canvas Course, which was on the original DS. It's a really fun Kirby game. It uses the gamepad like the DS touchscreen to really bring that style of game here. And it's just worth checking out. Mario Party 10 is next. Now, Mario Party is a series that's hard to recommend to, because you either love it or hate it. The new Bowser Party is a fair amount of fun. It also has, Amiibo support for the Super Mario Brothers series of Amiibos, which, just came out alongside this. If you're into Amiibos, you probably got it. If you love Mario Party, you probably got it. But overall, it's interesting, worth checking out if you're into that stuff. If not, you could probably avoid it. But you cannot avoid Platoon, which is the biggest surprise on the console. A new IP from Nintendo, an online arena shooter that's actually really fun, and the online works, and I can't believe Nintendo got this right. But it is incredible. There's so much style in this game. It's probably the most notable game on the console. I'm sure it'll come out for Switch, Splatoon 2 or something. But this game is awesome. And followed up by another heavy hitter, Super Mario Maker. It took a couple patches to get it to where it needed to be, but just wow. Like, everyone loves Mario Maker. If you haven't played it, it's a lot funner than it sounds. They did some amazing job with the UX. It's a really interesting look at how you can gamify UX. Level design is simple. Playing other people's levels is crazy fun. It's an amazing game. Next up, I've got Skylanders Superchargers, and you're probably wondering why I got this one when none of the other Skylander games have been mentioned. The truth is, I kind of like the Skylander series. I think it started off real good. The original game was really interesting. Giants was all right, but then Swap Force was really the high point of the series. But the reason I'm mentioning Superchargers is because of its Amiibo stuff that pissed off a lot of Amiibo people. But basically, if you wanted to get every Amiibo, you had to get the Skylander Amiibo variants, and there were Bowser and Donkey Kong available in regular and dark forms, and the only way to get the dark forms were to buy the dark editions of this Superchargers game on Nintendo platforms. There was, I think, Wii and maybe DS had Donkey Kong, and then Wii U had Bowser or something like that. Anyway, it pissed off a lot of people because no one wanted to pay $90, $120 depending on what you paid to get those. But it's really notable for that. It was a really smart move on Activision's part to kind of leverage Amiibos and make that deal with Nintendo to really give this game something special on this platform. Next up, we have Yoshi's Woolly World. You know, I think a lot of people expected this to just be another Epic Yarn. Definitely takes inspiration for its graphical style off of Kirby's Epic Yarn, but it plays like Yoshi's Island, and it plays a ton of fun. It is got 2-player co-op. It's got Amiibo support. The little yarn Amiibos are really cute. It's just a super fun and also pretty difficult game. But, you know, just another amazing platformer by Nintendo on this console. All right, next up, got to do some explaining. Project Zero, also known as Fatal Frame 5, Maiden of Blackwater. Not available over here as a physical version. We got a download. We had a download that was so big that if you had downloaded much else to your console, you had to get an external hard drive to play it. You'd have to have the, you know, I think it's close to 20 gigs. You know, the Wii U originally launched in 8 and 32 gig. Is it 16 and 32 gig? Regardless, if you bought the cheap Wii U, you couldn't even install it without an external hard drive. And if you bought the expensive one, then I hope you weren't using that space for much. It's an amazing title. I mean, that's overselling it. It's a great survival horror game. It's a great entry in the Fatal Frame series. It's not quite as good as 4, which also didn't come out over here. Well, it didn't come out over here at all. But you know, I love this series. I needed to have a physical copy. This one is from Europe, so it is in English. Although, you know, you can't really play it on your Wii U here without doing some, you know, things to your Wii U to make it work. But it was worth it in my opinion. You know, anyone else can just go out and play it if you like survival horror games. Just download the digital copy if you have a hard drive. But definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of survival horror. If you're a fan of Fatal Frame, you should play this one. Right into another strange one, Roda the Sky Soldier. This is a game that is notable because it was designed by Yuji Naka, who, you know, is most well known for Sonic and Nights into Dreams. This was a big game he was working on and proud of, that got delayed so much that it had to change platforms. It was originally developed for the Wii. You know, it came out on the Wii U, but what's interesting is the first print run anyway has a Wii disc in it. Because the Wii U is backwards compatible, you could play this in your Wii U. And that is the way that Yuji Naka recommended you play it. It's funny that it's a Wii game that kind of got shackled with a Wii U version just to be relevant, but definitely you know, worth checking out for that reason alone. Next up, we have a pretty controversial title, I would say, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. This game drives me crazy. Michelle really likes this game. I think basically you have to love Animal Crossing to love this game. It is Mario Party without the Mario. It's a board game. There are no mini games. The way you have to use Amiibos with it, and the way you use Amiibos is frustrating. Every player has to take the gamepad and press their Amiibo on it. You're constantly passing off the gamepad to each other just to tap the Amiibo on it. There's no need for that. But it is Animal Crossing. It's got all the charm of an Animal Crossing game. And so if you love Animal Crossing, then you should probably check it out. Otherwise, I would say avoid it. Xenoblade Chronicles X, the follow-up to one of the biggest RPGs on the Wii. Takes everything, makes it bigger, makes it better. It's an insane RPG. You know, there aren't too many RPGs on the Wii U, so you take what you can get, and luckily you got something pretty good with this one. You know, like the first game, it's still a kind of MMO-inspired combat, but there's mechs in it. It's pretty crazy. It's worth checking out. And finally, Minecraft Wii U Edition. You know, I think people had been pushing for a Wii U edition of Minecraft for quite a while before this came out. Reason being, they thought that using the gamepad would just be a lot more intuitive than any other console version. Problem with that was the developer didn't think so, I guess, because the gamepad use is minimal. You can barely do anything with the gamepad other than manage your inventory a little bit, which really ruins, you know, kind of the appeal of the game. But they included the Super Mario Mashup Pack, which is a ton of extra, you know, content themed around Mario that make this, you know, give us a bit of a Nintendo feel. It kind of feels like the old SimCity for SNES, where it was a regular old PC game, but then they threw in some Nintendo themed stuff to just make it a little more special, and that's kind of what this is. two other games that came out in the third year that are worth mentioning that I don't have. The first one is Mario Tennis. If you're into Mario sports games, I think that might be the only Mario sports game on the system other than the two Mario and Sonic Olympic games. And Devil's Third, which is Itagaki's big game he made after leaving Team Ninja. For those that don't know, Itagaki made the Ninja Gaiden reboot. It was huge. Everyone loved it. He had a bit of a falling out with Tecmo, and so he moved, he kind of got kicked out. But he, promised to come back with something big, and this was the big thing he promised, and it was a Wii U exclusive, and it performed pretty terribly. Before it even came out, the reviews kind of killed it. It got a really small print run. Most of the people that have played it that I've heard did not enjoy it. But because of that small print run, it's notable because it's probably going to be a huge collector's item. I think a lot of people thought that way up front and grabbed a lot of those copies. They're already crazy expensive online. But, worth noting, it is a Wii U exclusive. It was made by Itagaki. It's probably going to be fairly collectible. All right, we're in the home stretch now, year 4. Kicking it off with the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD. Another update to a Zelda game. This one, I think, not as impressive as Wind Waker just because of the graphical style. It can't really, go that much further. The textures that are used here as opposed to the cel shading used in Wind Waker just don't scale that nicely or as nicely as it could. It still looks great. They still streamlined the gameplay. They added some Amiibo support for customization options. It's just a little less impressive because Twilight Princess came out on the GameCube and Wii, so it's a little more recent. Again, still worth checking out for big Zelda fans, but other than that, that's about it. Tekken Tournament, Namco's take on Pokken mashed with Tekken. It plays a lot more like a 3D anime fighter than a Tekken game, but that's not a bad thing because it's a really good 3D anime fighter. Pokemons fighting each other are crazy fun. There isn't a huge roster, but there's enough to, keep you entertained for a while. I definitely think this is worth checking out. Next up, we got Star Fox Zero and Star Fox Guard. Long anticipated games. Well, one of them. Star Fox Zero was anticipated for quite a while. Star Fox Guard was a little tower defense game made by Platinum that they just kind of tossed in there. It's a decent tower defense game. It launched with the Star Fox Zero, so if you bought the physical copy, you got both at once. Again, tower defense is fun. It's nothing too special, but it is a fun little game. Star Fox Zero is potential wasted, in my opinion. Should be a great game. It looks good. It seems like the level design is interesting, but the gameplay just is frustrating. That's the best word for it, really. The way you have to use your gamepad to kind of precise aim. You're hopping back and forth between looking at the gamepad and the screen. You're trying to control your R-Wing in really strange angles so that it's not quite easy to figure out what direction to move your ship in that way. It's got some fun stuff, but you're going to have to really fight to get used to the controls before you can truly enjoy it. Next up, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE, I guess. I never really learned to say this game's name, but it is an incredible game. It is the long-anticipated mashup between Fire Emblem and Shin Megami Tensei. It's got a ton of Persona style in it. It's got idols. It's got weapons imbued with souls of characters from Fire Emblem. In my opinion, the best JRPG on the console. Xenoblade fans will come at me for that, but I love it. It's incredible. It is one of the best exclusives on the machine. It is worth checking out if you like JRPGs, if you like Persona, if you like Fire Emblem. This is a game worth checking out. And finally, Paper Mario Color Splash. The Paper Mario series, it has its ups and downs. I think it really lost a lot when it had to compete with Mario and Luigi, which I think is the better series. The Mario and Luigi series really sticks to its RPG roots. This game, the Paper Mario series anyway, has tried all kinds of different things to differentiate itself. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. In the case of Sticker Star, there was a lot of gameplay that was kind of pointless. In this case, there are definitely still some problems. There are some pacing issues. There's definitely still some issues with pacing and gameplay, but this dialogue is great. The characters are great. The world is great. Like I said, there's some downfalls, but it is definitely worth checking out. And that is basically it. Breath of the Wild is coming up next and may be the big last release of the system, but I think it was important to do this video to do a bit of a postmortem on a system that maybe not everyone played, but still had its fair share of games that are worth checking out, right? I would say all of these games are worth playing. I think that the Wii U is going to be hugely collectible moving forward, just because there are only 150 games. Anyone following the collection scene knows that, full sets are a big deal. A lot of people want complete sets for NES, SNES, GameCube, 64, but it's usually not obtainable. It's not obtainable for most people. 700, 800, even the N64s, less than 300 games is a big commitment, both monetary and time-wise, to seek those out. Also, some are incredibly rare. With this system, games are going to start dropping in price like crazy. It's going to be easy to get most of the games on this machine. There are only a couple rare ones, and even those, I don't know if any are over 100 yet. Maybe Devil's Third, maybe Xenoblade Chronicles. I don't know how that one's doing. But, I think a lot of people are going to go for a full Wii U set in the future. I think it's going to be the easiest Nintendo set to complete, but a lot of these games are real fun. It's worth checking out. So I hope you learned something about this video. Let's hope Nintendo does a little better with the Switch. I'll talk to you later. Bye.